In this video, we're going to look at the use of microcredentials in the context of the delivery of the New Zealand Diploma of Engineering and the Bachelor of Engineering Technology. This video was a presentation to the NZDE BEngTech Forum in February 2021. So let's start with definitions. So credential is a qualification, achievement, or quality used to indicate a person's suitability for something. So you have a driver's license, which says that you're suitable to drive a car. 400 meters swimming certificate says you can swim. You have achieved, you've swam 400 meters. And in an educational context, we've got certificates, diplomas, and degrees, which recognise that you have passed a certain defined learning process. Microcredential in education is recognition of a smaller package of learning, so smaller than a certificate, smaller than a degree. Um, the, so there, in New Zealand, we've got the word microcredential is really used in two different things, related but different. So I've called the first one competency-based microcredentials. Overseas, they'll just call them microcredentials. So a lot of the literature you see when they're talking about microcredentials, these are what you're referring to, these rather small microcredentials. So they recognize a single competency, something like producing a drawing, producing a plan for an earthworks project or something like that. They are 1 to 3 credits, which means 10 to 30 hours learning for someone who's new to the subject. They take days or weeks. So if someone's spending, say, 4 to 6 hours a week on study, they should be able to do all the learning and then produce evidence of that learning within a few days or a few weeks. The NZQA microcredentials are the microcredentials that are recognised in the NZQF microcredential register. So they provide a formal recognition of a coherent set of skills and knowledge, which is bigger than obviously the single competency recognised in the smaller microcredentials. They're 5 to 40 credits, so that's 50 to 400 hours learning for someone who's new to the subject. And because of that, it would take someone months to complete the microcredential. The way they'll be recorded, in my view, is the competency-based microcredentials would be really quite suitable for internal to Te Pūkenga. They could be the way that we keep a track of learner achievements if we were to break some of our courses down into smaller parts. The NZQA microcredentials provide the opportunity of providing a more formal, larger qualification that would sit on the NZQF microcredential register, and it would carry a lot more clout. So they can be used together, which I'll be demonstrating in this presentation. So let's just start with this concept of stacking. Oftentimes it's just referring to competency-based microcredentials, but you could also do it with the NZQA type ones. So let's just think of them as the competency-based ones. So a Lego block, one microcredential if you like. By itself, it doesn't mean all that much. But if you take a whole lot of them and stack them together, you can make a lighthouse, you can make an igloo, you can make a castle, you can make a windmill out of the same bricks. It's just a matter of rearranging them. So this is an analogy for learning. The brick is the microcredential. You can take the microcredentials from a group of learning modules, which are recognized by microcredentials, and you can create your own pathway to meet your own learning needs. So that's what stacking does. It allows a learner to develop and follow their own learning pathway according to what they need to be able to do. Or it could be an industry encouraging their people to follow this pathway. So rearranging the micro-credentials is really quite a useful concept. And you can do that because you've taken those courses and you've broken them down into smaller parts. Courses by themselves, um, a semester, 3 months, that's just too big to be moving around. Yes, you can move the courses into a certain order, but when you take it right down to the smaller micro credential level, then you can do it much easier. You can do it much more flexibly. You can do more micro credentials in that 3 months than you would for just one course. So let's look at some of the potential education uses. An alternative delivery method. So I'm not proposing micro-credentials to replace conventional course-based programs where someone goes to to a polytech, does 4 15-credit courses each semester. That works just fine for a lot of people, but it also doesn't work for a lot of people, and there's a lot of people shut out. So this is offering an alternative for those people that can't really do the conventional type of learning. They could learn smaller using micro credentials. They could learn it in bits. It's going to take them longer, but they are at least able to engage in learning. Bridging education. When we're talking about the NZDE, a lot of people are held back by the maths, and it's really just some basic maths. So we could have bridging courses like a maths course or a basic physics course that you need to do before you enter the NZDE program. Um, in addition to that, we'll talk about it later about workers. That could be basic academic skills, basic communication skills, time management skills, those things that they need before they start studying online learning, doing micro credentials. So once again, that bridging micro credentials offer you that opportunity to provide those type of courses, get them recognised, and obviously provide the students with an achievement. Assessment of prior learning. When we have experienced people like uh, construction workers coming to us, oftentimes we'll look at what courses we can cross credit. And oftentimes they've done maybe 25, 50, 75% of the course, but we can't cross credit them the course because they need 80%. So they have to do the whole course all over again. With micro credentials, you can say, well, they've got this micro credential, they've got that micro credential. There's 2 more they need to do to meet all the learning outcomes for this course. So it makes it easier for someone to have their previous experience and learning recognized, and then get on with learning what they need to learn. Also, additional new competencies that might be within the within the course. The students might want to do additional courses, might want to just do a little bit more about, say, uh, machine control or something like that, just because they're interested in it or because it's related to their work. So that offers the opportunity. Could also recognise tutors who students who do past work, who help other students. So once again, uh, that could recognise soft skills that the student has shown in the course of their studies. The other thing that these micro credentials could be is if industry comes to us and asks for people with a new competency. So they might come to us and say, hey, we need people that are really experienced in or know how to fly drones. So with a course, if we had a course, we'd have to we'd have to produce a 15-credit course, and that would take maybe a year to get it developed and approved and connected into the system. But if we were to put it into a 1 to 2 credit micro credential, which takes people a few days to learn, we could develop that within a month, uh, and then the next month students could be doing the course. Within 2 months, we've actually got students with that particular competency. Now, that might be students doing the course, or it might be postgraduate people. But in any case, micro-credentials being smaller take less time to develop. Therefore, we can actually respond to industry's needs much quicker. And also professional development. After a person has graduated, there's always a need to upskill. Um, Obviously, professional development already does that, and there are a whole lot of really good programs out there. Technically, they are micro-credential programs already. But if we recognize them as part of the same framework, the same, uh, uh, then that maybe gives them a little bit more clout as opposed to having a whole lot of separate professional development achievements. So let's look at competency-based micro-credentials in a little bit more detail. They could be aligned to formal qualifications. So you do these, so this could be a course, and you do these four micro-credentials, and you've done the course. Um, with a conventional course, that's not all that useful. Although those modules, once you've prepared them all, they could be used in the conventional course, and that's one of the things we're doing at present. And then obviously they all align for the NZDE. But what they could also do is you could take the courses, a whole lot of micro-credentials, parts of courses, and put them together into a coherent set of skills and knowledge which align to an industry role. So if you've got something like a site engineer, you could have management papers, a few micro-credentials that relate to management of construction sites. You could have a few papers that relate to the testing, the geotechnical testing you do on the site. You could have a few more papers that relate to drain laying and how you test the pipes. You could have a few more related to construction set out. So together, those micro-credentials picked from little bits of different courses could together provide the set of competencies needed to carry out an industry role. Now, we've already studied civil engineering industry, and there's maybe 5, 6 industry roles: site engineer, CAD draftsperson, subdivision designer, roading maintenance engineer. So those sort of things all have a set of competencies which we already teach, but we teach them mixed in with the competencies required for the other roles. So this would allow us to focus on a particular role. So just to give you an idea of how that might work, here's a story, if you like, about a young person that's just starting at a construction site, or it could be a worker who's decided to advance up into management. So they'd start in January. Sorry about the, yeah, it's all gone a bit wonky because I changed the format. But they'd start doing the basic courses. The construction site would be doing earthworks. So they'd be studying earthworks testing. That would allow them to be useful. They'd be able to go out and do the testing because they've just learned how to do it. Um, then we could be doing the drainage and the roading. So they'd be learning about roading and how roads lay, so they know what a road looks like. They go outside and they see a road being laid, so that's enhancing their learning. And they're also learning the tests that you need to do when you're doing the road test, so they're earning their money at the same time. And then it might be that you have the winter come along and they do a few more courses. This illustrates another thing, is that when you are not doing all that much, you can do a whole lot of micro credentials. When you're busy, you might go back to one or no micro credentials that month because you're busy working. So micro credentials, when you split it into little bits and allow the worker to do their own pathway, then they are able to do the micro credentials at a pace that meets their life, because life gets in the way of a lot of students. They study when they can, and they work when they have to. Right, so let's look at how NZQA micro credentials fit in. And really, that's just become a really exciting prospect with the NZQA announcing that programs leading to qualifications may include micro-credentials as components of learning. So we can take the NZDE and use those courses or the modules that make up those courses to produce micro-credentials that can be recognised on the NZQA forum. Framework. So what that does is that allows us to provide intermediate qualifications, intermediate credentials. So a student doesn't just have to wait for 2 years to get an NZDE before they've got something to show an employer. They can go and get a recognition, a micro-credential on the NZQF micro-credential register, and that is something that might get them into a job which is earning money. Then they do the rest of the course either by courses or they do it by micro-credentials, whatever. So the two ways that might work is recognition of specializations. It would recognize the student has completed all of the courses or the requirements for concrete design, for example, or drainage design. So that might recognize um, a specialization. But the really exciting thing is an industry role. So as I mentioned before, if you take those little modules, the competency-based micro-credentials, if you like, stack them together, you could end up with the competencies, a coherent set of skills and knowledge that relate to industry roles. And that could be sitting on the NZQA register. Someone gets that, they take their micro credential to an employer. The employer knows that that person can do that particular work. They have a way of being useful to industry. So they work in industry, they get paid, and then they can nickel and dime the rest of their qualification. Just do maybe a course a year or a course every 6 months, in the same way that people used to do that for the NZCA. So we were really excited about the whole thing, and we sort of thought that um, micro-credentials offered a great way for workers, construction workers, to advance up into the engineering um, management roles. Uh, we can only get so many people from school, and we thought that construction workers would be the ideal people to fill some of the gaps in the engineering industry because they've been in the industry for a long time, they're committed to the industry, they have a lot of knowledge of the industry, they just lack the academic um, and technical skills that are required to be an engineer. So what we did was we got funding from the TEC, and we took one of the papers we had, a level 5 paper, Highway Engineering 1, and we split it into 5 micro-credentials. Now these micro-credentials do not align to the um, learning outcomes. Together, they meet all of the learning outcomes, but we didn't just take the learning outcomes and make each one of those a micro-credential because it just didn't work out that way. These are each relevant to a particular skill. This is being able to design and manage a road earthworks. This is the pavement design and construction. This is the drainage system design and construction. And this is the road maintenance processes and stuff like that. So yes, that one aligns to this, but the microcredit, but they don't totally align to the learning outcomes. So we produced an online set of resources, videos, links to websites. They included written text and textbook as well. So a whole lot of learning resources for each of these, and each one of them had an assessment. How do you demonstrate your competency in this particular um, topic? And so that was the micro-credential part. Once they'd actually demonstrated the competency, they would get the micro-credential. So we, only 3 got prepared because basically no one got on to the 4th or 5th ones. So we had 7 learners to start. We were in partnership with Downers, and they were very generous, and they provided some people, but only 4 of those people actually got going. The other 3 had a look and then just didn't do anything. Another person came on board, had spent some time with it, but once again she dropped away as well. The learners were all road workers. They were all experienced construction workers. They knew how to build a road. In fact, they were responsible for building roads. They were highly motivated. They wanted to advance. They didn't want to be on the roads all their lives. They wanted to go forward. They had minimal formal education, maybe NCEA level 1 if they were lucky. We met with them each month, talked to them about what they were doing, did a bit of tutoring and stuff like that. It all lasted from March to December 2019, and with all that effort, only 4 micro-credentials were issued. It turned out that they didn't have those basic academic skills to be able to do online learning. We should have provided an academic micro-credentials ahead of it. We thought we could embed the micro-credentials into it, into each one of these, and we did, but it was just a bridge too far for them. So I'll talk a bit more about the lessons learned. The first thing was I only managed to recruit 4 people from one company. All the other companies, I spend a lot of time sort of talking to different companies and professional organizations, and everyone was really keen about it and thought, oh, yeah, what a great idea. But really, we were asking a bit much. We were asking for people to spend 150 hours in the course of the year to do the studying. They were all a bit leery about the whole thing. While we did say that it was linked into the NZDE, it was just too far removed for them to see it as part of a conventional education offering. So we didn't get any takers. So what we learned there was you need to leverage it out of an existing successful program, which means it needs to be leveraged out of the NZDE. Basic academic skills, you really need to provide those up front, and that's not just academic, it's time management. It is learning how to use an Excel spreadsheet. It is learning how to use spell check, learning how to manage your time, all those sort of things there. It's not much, but it's really quite essential. They knew that they had the knowledge, but they were not able to apply it because they didn't have the academic skills. So they knew how to build a road. They knew what the tests were when they built the road. What they didn't know was how to take all that knowledge and put it into a spreadsheet, which would be a quality plan. They weren't able to develop a routine. So when we looked at the Moodle engagement, they might do 2 or 3 hours a week, one week. Then the next week they'll do nothing. Then they might do another couple of hours the following week. So they weren't getting into a routine, um, and that was just because they were busy people, and also because they didn't realise that you needed a routine. And also connectivity. A few of them didn't really have the internet connections to go to the online site that we had, so we had to download all of the on-site material onto a flash drive, and we gave them that. So we learned quite a lot, and we're pretty keen to carry on. We do think that there is a lot of promise to bring construction workers in particular up through into the NZDE, and micro-credentials are a big part of that. If you've got any questions or would like to discuss it further, I'd invite you to contact me, Hugh Wilson. That's hwilson@unitech.ac.nz. Thank you.